problem. It troubles the devil out of me.
It troubles me.
If I'm crazy.
No, it troubles me too. So
did you notice how Jesse, he uses the same speech, and he even gropes for the same word at the same point in time, and this isn't the same speech being repeated on different networks. It's at different venues, different places, and that just bothers me because he's so programmed, he's so slick, and maybe I'm the only guy noticing it, and if I am, it's too bad, but I don't think I am.
Okay, thanks for the call, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. 591-8900 is the number. I'm Richard Roeper. It's 1040 on WLS. And we're going to continue to take your calls, and we're going to take a break right now. I'll be right back after this.
To Mom for Mother's Day, I'd give you...
And they would take half the day to talk to us and show us films about the United Way and signing up for programs like that. What they need to do is have programs about race and ethnic relations, get people together on their jobs, let them talk, let them vent their angers and frustrations and get something done.
Also in the schools, I talked to, this week I was sitting in for Don Wade and Roma on the breakfast diner, and I talked Friday morning to a teacher who said that on Thursday they had pretty much, scrapped the usual lesson plan and had talked about what was going on in the world right here, right now, and made that part of the lesson plan. And I think that's important too. One of the problems in our schools is that we have textbooks sometimes that are so far out of date that people are reading about Watts in 1965 when things are going on 27 years later.
And that's another point. I'll try to be very brief, but racism is a disease. You had a caller that's suffering from it, and I'm sure he doesn't even realize it.
Yeah.
He said that he knew there were people, that there was only a small minority of people, the hoodlums, the thugs that did this, and then in the same breath he said, now all those minorities who were working to better themselves, they just blew it. That's a racist statement. Why should the good people have just blown it because the thugs and the hoodlums did something wrong?
Absolutely.
You cannot put people in a category like that. Another point. White people are not going to understand. It's not going to be that easy to understand me immediately. So what they need to do is take it by steps. I have been very educated, gone to good schools. I can't name for you off the top of my head any Armenian philosophers. I can't name for you off the top of my head any Croatian painters. I can't name for you off the top of my head great Serbian mathematicians. That is the problem of racism. White people, even your individual ethnic groups, are not exposed to the rest of the world. They are not talked about. They are not dealt with. If you took a survey, we could all tell you who George Washington was. That is not right. We should also all know who led the Haitian Revolution, who did something in Ghana yesterday, who did something in South Africa. The problem extends not only to black people. Other ethnic groups have to realize that they are being stepped on by the rich in this country. I don't say violence, but people should have marched and demonstrated when that white gentleman was fired from his job for not contributing to George Bush. That is wrong. It's between rich and poor. It's not just between black and white. So people have to realize that they suffer from the disease of racism, not make blanket statements like that, and begin to expose everybody to all other cultures. One point in closing. To justify for the late or to explain to her about the Korean problem and the Arab problem and that whole situation, she should study something called redlining, where the banks refuse to give loans to certain people in this country, and those certain people too often turn out to be black and Hispanic. When you look up and you have been here, and people like myself, and I haven't applied personally, but I know people that have applied for loans, wanted to start a business, had a business plan, and they were denied because of redlining. And then you see a group come in like the Koreans, and they are all of a sudden massively into the business community. You say to yourself, how did that happen? And when you check out how it happened, it becomes insulting. So I'd like her to study that, study redlining, find out how these things go on, and just, when we look at little kids playing in the park, they get along. They don't know. One little kid falls down, the other little kid helps them. If you bleed, I bleed. It's both red. If we wouldn't teach our kids this, when they get to be adults, we wouldn't have this problem.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you, Richard.
Okay, thanks, Alyssa. 591-8900 is the number on WLS. It's 1046. Sometimes you just like to step back and listen to what people have to say. I've been impressed all week long and again this morning with so many different opinions and so well said. 591-8900 is the number. It's 1046. We're going to go out to the south side. James, you're on WLS.
Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, I'd like to say redlining isn't a Korean problem. If they can get the loan, they should.
Yes.
It's not their fault that they can get the loan. It's the system's fault that the blacks can't get it.
Okay.
I want to say this country is so hypocritical. We applaud the bombing in Libya and Iraq, but as soon as the reaction happens here, we all want to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. This country's so hypocritical.
Yeah, I find it interesting because over and over I kept hearing from people who were watching the news, they said, you know, it doesn't seem like that's America. It's like watching, you know, Iraq or Bosnia or you know, other places across the globe. In other words, is it the same? It's okay when it happens over there. Those are just people, you know, those are just foreigners getting killed.
Yeah, I mean, the situation in South Africa, I mean, we could have bombed South Africa. I mean, Africans over there have been oppressed for years. But instead, we go to Iraq and we free the Kuwaitis just because it's an economical advantage for us. That's the only reason.
Yes.
Another thing I like to say is the number one problem in the country is drugs. Why can't the president send troops in to get the drug dealers? Why can't it? That's the number one problem.
Yeah, a lot of other things do stem from that.
That's right. Once we solve that problem, maybe the other problems would be easier. But that problem, I wouldn't want to see him roll in the streets of Chicago, but I think it needs to be done.
Okay. Fair enough, James. Thanks for the call.
Okay.
591-8900 is the number. Mark in Maywood, you're on WLS.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, Mark.
I just want to say I'm a first-time listener, but I've been reading you a long time, and you should get some credit for, you have written some things long before this happened about the black-white situation, and I appreciate it as a reader.
Well, thanks a lot.
I was appalled earlier with some listeners, and since then some later callers have hit it right on the head. The generalization that some folks make about black folks is just incredible.
Yeah.
The one guy was talking about if it was a white guy, it wouldn't have been a riot. Most white Americans don't know how it feels to be a black man and be stopped by policemen in America. Almost every black man has a story of what happened. Policemen have a preconceived notion about black men, and it's downhill usually from there.
There was a real telling anecdote in one of the stories about a man who was vice president at the time, George Bush's policy advisor, a black man who was walking through a very Tony section of Washington, D.C. about 7 or 8 years ago and was stopped because he was wearing just jeans and a T-shirt. And when he told them, I'm a high-ranking advisor to the vice president, they laughed in his face and they said, no, you fit the profile of a robbery suspect.
Right. And so then here we have proof on camera and still no justice, and a lot of people were frustrated. We all didn't riot. We all don't condone it. We hate it. I mean, gosh, who could stand watching a guy get shot?
Right.
You know? And then about the Korean thing, and I hope I'll make this brief, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody. There's a poet named Gil Scott Heron who talks about new niggers, and what he means is we've been in this country so long building it. Every now and then, the United States gets a new nigger, Korean, and somebody else. But they all rise above the black man, and the black man's back at the bottom of the pile again, and we're frustrated.
And that's where the resentment comes from. Thanks a lot for the call, Mark. We really appreciate it. It's 10:50 on WLS, and we're going to take a look at the WLS Dependable Weather Forecast. Today, partly sunny, windy, and cool. High in the middle or upper 50s. Northwest winds 15 to 25 miles per hour and gusty. Tonight, partly cloudy, cold. Low in the upper 30s or lower 40s. Northwest winds diminishing to 10 miles per hour. Monday, becoming cloudy, a 50% chance of showers, cooler, and high in the lower 50s. The WLS Dependable Weather temperature right now at O'Hare, it's 51 degrees. It's 53 degrees at Midway and 52 degrees at the lake. The humidity is at 50%. Our next complete WLS Dependable Weather Forecast will be at 11:20 here on WLS Talk Radio, 94.7 FM, 890 AM.
I'm Katherine Johns, and I'm looking forward to your follow-up on the violence that erupted this past week in Los Angeles and around the nation. Rodney King was asking everyone to pull together. We'll see whether that's happened and look into our collective crystal ball. Where do you think this episode's going to take us? We'll talk it over on the late afternoon Katherine Johns program, 3 to 7 on WLS, Talk Radio, FM and AM.
Recently, the wife and I were arguing about sticking to our budget. So today she comes home from grocery shopping, and I'm helping her unpack, and I see she bought a box of that stuff that helps you stretch hamburger and another that helps you stretch tuna. And I think, okay, maybe she didn't know Dominic's was having a meat sale. So I go to another bag and find boxes of bologna helper and wiener helper that says it can feed a family of 10 on an ordinary cocktail weenie. And I say, honey, did you know Dominic's is having a meat sale with prices so good we don't need any helper? But there's no response, so I keep unpacking and it gets worse. head cheese helper, smelt helper, and who would have thought, spam helper. Hey, our marriage has survived 22 years, but if she thinks I'm going to stick around and eat this stuff, heaven help her.
Through Wednesday, Dominic's has prices that meet your budget with lean ground beef just...
Chicago wants to know what you're thinking, so don't keep it to yourself. Just say it. WLS Talk Radio 94.7 FM and 890 AM.
It's 10:53, 7 minutes before 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning here in Chicago. WLS Talk Radio 94.7 FM, 890 AM. I'm Richard Roeper, columnist for the Sun-Times, Sunday through Thursday on page 11. I return from my Sun-Times vacation tomorrow with a column. Every Sunday, I'm here on WLS from 8 a.m. until noon. 591-8900 is the number. It's 10:53 on WLS. We're going to go to the South Side. Eric, you're on WLS.
Good morning, Richard.
Morning, Eric.
Well, I was watching George Bush's speech Friday night.
Yes.
Something just came to my mind saying, like, how can George Bush try to appeal to Tom while he's trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator to get reelected?
All of a sudden, and Friday morning he met with civic leaders and black community leaders and all this and that. And I was thinking, why did it take him nearly 4 years to have such a meeting? It seems that he did it when it fit his agenda.
I wish one of those leaders would have gave him a good tongue lashing. A good tongue lashing. I mean, just really, set his ears back, burn some ears.
Yeah, he could use it.
But I hope, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember this November 3rd when I vote.
Good for you.
I can't be violent. The only place I can do something to send him a message and the rest of this country a message.
Hit him where it hurts, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call. 591-8900 is the number. It's 10:54 on WLS. We're going to go to the South Side, and Dennis, you're on WLS.
Hello.
Morning.
Yes, I got a possible solution to the problem over in L.A.
Go for it.
All that rioting and all that, they got all upset because the policeman beat Rodney King, which is wrong. They shouldn't have done it. But can you imagine if they would get that upset, one of those gang members or drug leaders go by and they do a drive-by and shoot one of those kids like they're doing every day.
That's right.
But they never get upset over it. And they're killing each other over it like crazy, but they never get upset over that.
Well,
I can't understand that. They're more worried about what the white man's doing to them.
Okay, fair enough. 591-8900 is the number. I will say that I would have liked to have seen Dorothy Tillman and other black leaders, and I said this as early as Thursday morning, call for an end to the senseless violence and certainly address the problem of black-on-black violence. And the sad, tragic, heaviest irony of this is that all the destruction of property that took place in South Central Los Angeles and the jobs that were lost, a true tragedy that will last longer, a lot longer than this initial firestorm of controversy in this first weekend. 591-8900 is the number. Paul on the southwest side. How you doing, Paul? You're on WLS.
Hi, this is Paul.
Hi.
I'd just like to take a few minutes, not too much time.
Good.
I'm hearing a lot of, people calling in and complaining about what happened. And that's, people are right. A lot of bad things have happened, but we should start looking inward. We should start looking at what we all have in common. We may be black, we may be white, we may be Hispanic, but we're all human, and we all have to live here on this earth together. And, we have to start looking from within ourselves. Healing starts from within. If we're not willing to put aside our differences, and if we're not willing to put aside our races, then we're going to have to deal with the problems that'll come from that. Now, I live on the southwest side. I live near Englewood, the highest crime-ridden district in Chicago.
That's correct.
And I have to give people in this neighborhood and in Englewood a lot of credit. They're not out shooting people. They're not starting fires. There are children being murdered, like our last caller just said, on the street. The gangs that are shooting people as they drive by.
Yeah.
We've had 2 shootings in front of my home here. But at least the people in Englewood, and the people in Chicago are learning from their past mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not burning anymore. I remember the problems back in the 60s in Marquette Park, the area that I grew up in. And it was horrible and devastating.
Yeah.
And if anybody in this city has a right to be upset, it's the people living in Inglewood. I mean, but they're at least dealing with it on a level where, you know, they're working past their past history.
That's right. Nobody ever burned down a problem.
Right. And we won't get rid of it that way. And I think that it's time that we start looking at things from what are we going to teach our children? I mean, if anybody's going to learn, it's children. And children have to learn how to grow up and deal in this world. And if they can't look towards their parents and their leaders and their community organizers for help, then the children are going to grow up just like we did.
It's the same cycle then. It's got to start at a young age.
It's got to start somewhere. And the other thing I wanted to say, you had a caller on a while ago who said that he wasn't going to be American because his race wasn't being treated right. You know, and if we're living in this country, we're Americans. And as much as, you know, I'm an Irish American, there's African Americans, we're still human beings, we're still Americans. And if we can't put aside our differences and start working on these problems together, it's only going to get worse.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for the call, Paul.
Bye-bye.
591-8900 is the number. I'm Richard Roeper. This is WLS Talk Radio, 94.7 FM, 890 AM. Very good points there. We should also remember that in South Central Los Angeles, the same thing was going on. The vast majority of people were at home, not out in the streets causing trouble. 591-8900 is the number. We're going to continue to take your calls on the situation in Los Angeles. I'm Richard Roeper, and this is WLS, 94.7 FM, 890 AM.
Events in Los Angeles have sparked a nationwide debate on race relations, our criminal justice system, and the importance of freedom in America. Here in Chicago, now more than ever, this is the place for you to stand up and speak out. We're Chicago's talk station.
WLS, AM and FM, Chicago.
The time of the tone is 11 o'clock.
Here's the latest from ABC News. I'm Linda Moore. A Sunday to sift through the ash and rubble in Los Angeles and think about the tragic events of the past several days that left 46 people dead and more than 2,000 injured. Courts are again in session to continue arraignments for about 9,000 arrested. ABC's Judy Muller says a lot of feelings continue to surface in the wake of the violence triggered by Wednesday's Rodney King verdict.
People are angry about it, and they're beginning to question why Chief Darrell Gates didn't send enough police in soon enough, why he didn't call for the National Guard to come in and help soon enough. We have gone from one extreme to the other in 4 days. 4 days ago, it was lawlessness, chaos. Now it's almost a police state with National Guard troops and armed with M16 rifles down at the beach and chasing people off the beach. People down there are saying, where were you guys 4 days ago when we needed you? So I think there are a lot of hard questions coming.
Overnight, Marines were deployed to relieve National Guard troops in Long Beach, Compton, and Torrance. LAPD Lieutenant Steve Roller says some Marines will also be out and about today.
They were going to be maintaining positions throughout the city, supplementing the National Guard units that are presently assigned to the city.
Church leaders are discussing the healing process from the pulpit this morning as volunteers continue to help the homeless. Flatbed trucks filled with food and clothing are dropping off supplies at housing projects. Many residents are still without electricity, which is why candles, powdered milk, and even bottled water are among the supplies. Some celebrities are offering support. Barbara Streisand is pledging $100,000 for cleanup efforts. Now this.
When you meet her, she'll stay in your mind, your soul, your dreams. And that'll be your nightmare. Johnny Faye Boudreau, the devil in a short red dress, has been charged with